like an acceptable goal, terrorism has haunted us. But I stand here to disagree that it's poverty and exclusion that lead to terrorism. Instead, it is greed.
Did you know that it is the Arabic-rich countries that support the Al-Shabaab in Somalia?
Thank you for making time for GDC Connect Edition once again. I am your host, Mariam Bishar. Our panel of veteran debaters seeks to dissect debates from the Machakos region and give them a deeper perspective. Today we're dealing with Lukenya High School versus Ndalani High School on whether poverty and exclusion lead to terrorism. I'll have my panel introduce themselves, beginning with Bill.
My name is Bill Omondi. I'm a student at JKUAT.
My name is Alvin Kaburu. I'm a student at the University of Nairobi.
I'm Claire Mushiri from Kenyatta University.
Rodney Wesonga, JKUAT.
Okay, very good. And I am Austin Nyumbok. The proposers were highlighting the fact that poverty, and the disappointment of these youth or these individuals that actually turn to terrorism, and bitterness is actually the cause or is what leads individuals into terrorism. So we can honestly say that the fact that they're poor, poverty, and the fact that they're excluded makes them disappointed and bitter, and thus they resort to terrorism. Claire, would you like to speak more on that?
When people are made to feel out of place, then they run to the one place where they feel like they are important, and that's what terror groups do. They make you feel like you're understood, like you have someone who believes in you. And they make you start to believe in what they believe in. And they turn you into their walking machines.
Yeah, so basically terror groups end up defining these individuals, being a solace to these individuals. Bill, tell us more about that.
It's true actually, from what I read about the MRC group in Kenya. The terror groups, they know so well the grievances of these people, and they'll use that to give them a soft spot, So if you're told to join them because we'll get back your land, you'll feel actually this is the place I belong. These are people who understand me, they understand my needs, and they want to fight for me. But in the long run, you are drilled to do other things that are inhuman. Yeah, but I think according to the proposers, the argument was standing. Yeah.
Okay. They also mentioned the monetary aspect. Yeah, people are lured into terror groups through very fat rewards, promises of pays in like tens of thousands of euros. To someone who's never seen 10,000 shillings, you offer them 10,000 euros. I mean, how could they resist, right, Rodney?
I agree, because we find that most of these people who join Al-Shabaab, they're mainly lured into these terror groups through money. I am unemployed. I have to sustain myself. I have to sustain my family. How am I going to do this? Here comes someone who's giving me an offer. I'm going to give you 10,000 euros. I've never even held 5,000 shillings in my hand, Kenyan shillings. Why should I refuse? And then there's this desire from our youth to become rich fast. We want to become rich very quickly. And joining a terror group is an avenue. Why not? We have seen before that mainly terror groups do fund illegal wildlife trading. A fact by the EAL, an NGO that deals with the elephants in Africa, according to a report in 2011, a kilo of ivory, that elephant tusk, could go for 20,000 shillings. So, if this...
one elephant tusk is at least 5 kilos.
Yes.
So that's 100,000
That's 100,000, clean cash. Very easy money, quick money. Instead of me going to toil and tarmac and wait for a salary at the end of the month. No, I have an avenue I can earn quickly. And we do find that these people who carry out this illegal trade, they are working together with these terror groups. Where are they getting this manpower from? They can get them straight from the poachers, because they fund them with this arsenal that they use in illegal trade. Thus, they increase their numbers. By 2011, a research carried out by Austin Gastro, at 2011, yes, the Al-Shabaab militia group were at 5,000 only. That is way back in 2011. 5 years down the line. We can do the math. How many are they today?
Yeah. Alvin, do you agree with him? And with the proposer's general argument?
Yeah, I think for it, it's a combination of the two aspects. Number one, if you check the most regions where terrorism is a problem, or where we believe that these issues of terrorism come from, originate, we find that most of the people that live in these regions, they don't live in the best conditions, the best human conditions. I think we see that poverty surrounds them, and at the same time, they feel that they are left out of what is going on in the country. Take, for instance, in the coast. It's one of the regions where poverty is at high levels in Kenya. And at the same time, they have this perception that they're too far away from Nairobi. And despite the fact that we have devolved governments, they still feel that they're left out of the administration. So if you join these two factors, they result to people looking for other venues to feel at home, or to ensure that they gain they gain wealth generally. Yes.
Okay, let's bring to light the opposer's argument. Claire, back to you again. Aside from just poverty and exclusion, there are more factors that lead to terrorism. They talked about something in regards to social injustice. Could you shed some light on that?
Yeah, I remember one of the opposers gave an example of the situation between Palestine and Israel, that the Palestinian people live literally in the middle of Israel, and the Israeli government refuses to acknowledge them as a state of their own, even though they do carry out their own activities, and they run almost like a country, but without just that recognition as being a country. And that's an example of a social injustice. Why should these people be denied the right to be their own country if they've proven that they can exist on their own, have their own laws, have their own constitution, run their own economy? So when Palestinians fight back against the Israelis for what they deem as injustice to them, then you can do very little to stop them. What can you say?
It's funny, someone could say that's almost an argument supporting the proposition, because when you exclude someone such that they're not part of your country, yes, but they're not an independent entity, right? That's exclusion of a form. So someone could argue that it's the same thing that the proposition we're talking about. Rodney, here you have a different view.
To what you've said, I agree. It does lean on the side of exclusion. If the opposers wanted to focus on another problem aside from poverty and exclusion, there are very many other problems. One, I'll shed light on our justice system. We do find that the deterrent effect on terrorism is not as strong as we believe. The effects of carrying out a terrorism act does not deter me from carrying out that act. So on the part of the judiciary,
Saying our penalties are not strict enough.
Yes, the penalties are not strict enough. So that deterrent effect that we aim at imposing on terrorism is not there. So we need to review our justice system. Aside from poverty and exclusion, that is one area that we need to look at also.
I think just to add on that, according to the Prevention of Terrorism Act of 2012, subsection chapter 26, it talks about we have the penalties that once you're found as a terrorist, the first thing it states that you get a minimum of 7 years of a sentence. Secondly, if you're able to, there is also a fine of 3 million Kenya shillings, and
not less.
Yeah, not less than 3 million Kenya shillings. And if you look at this, for most of these terrorist groups, they are heavily funded. And 3 million Kenyan shillings is like
pocket change.
Exactly, it's pocket change. So I think that in support of what he said, the justice system needs some reform.
Okay.
Again, just to add on what Alvin has said, we do have this belief that those people who join Al-Shabaab are the poor. That is a very bad
or the uneducated,
perspective, because there are people who are educated and well off in the society who do join Al-Shabaab.
Because it's important to note that it's organized crime, and organized crime requires some level of management.
Because these guys, when they go to war, when they are shot, when they're injured, you tell me they'll go to a hospital. They have doctors within they're a militia group.
Yeah.
And a doctor is somebody who has gone to school. Probably they were earning before they were recruited there.
Yeah.
They have engineers amongst them. So this belief that poverty is what leads us to join terrorism, we also need to look at these guys who join Al-Shabaab or Al-Qaeda or even Boko Haram, and they're still well off. They were earning a decent salary, but it was their choice to join Al-Shabaab. Maybe they got a better offer.
Yeah. Maybe the sense of belonging is what they're craving. Maybe the sense of community. Which brings me to something funny. We tend to, especially in this country, we've tried to fight off Al-Shabaab militants, mostly from Somalia, and they've creeped in. And then we reacted as a country by then stereotyping the Somali people, as an ethnic group, which further excludes them and makes them more likely to join Al-Shabaab, right? So we're sort of caught in this circle. We're in a trap, and we're sort of biting our own tail. So what do you think the government is doing? What can we do to stop that cycle of, hey, we feel like we're stereotyping you because we think you're the problem, but by doing that, we're excluding you and causing you to gravitate towards Al-Shabaab and other militant groups? Bill?
Okay, I think what we should do, or what we should first think of, is these terrorists, it's not a group of people, like, for example, the way we tend to think they're Somalis or something. It's an individual making a choice to become a terrorist. So it can be me, it can be you, it can be anyone else. Yeah? So what the government should do, or I think it should fight terrorism and not people who they think are terrorists.
It's a powerful statement.
Yeah.
But terrorism is perpetrated by people.
So we should also not forget the people.
Okay, no, you say fight terrorism and not the people. Who are you fighting?
Okay.
Not the people you've stereotyped to be terrorists, let's say, for example.
That's what I meant.
Okay.
Yeah.
So very good. I think we should go for break right now. But the question that we're posing to our viewers is that, do you believe that the government has actually exhausted all avenues to fight terrorism? Hit us up on Twitter at Great Debaters EA. I'm Austin Yambok. See you after the break.
Orchestrator of the Garissa attacks was actually a lawyer, studied in Wami, one of the top Muslim schools in Kenya, went to University of Nairobi, one of the top universities in Eastern Africa, and was a fully qualified and registered lawyer. So why would he leave a lucrative career as a lawyer and go to carry out a terror attack on a university?
I am excluded from my country activities, if I am excluded from participating in political activities, if I am excluded from giving out my views about my country, what should I do? I should go to another country at a place that people will love me.
Thank you for staying tuned. Welcome back to the Great Debaters Contest Connect edition. Today we're discussing matters terrorism and whether poverty and exclusion are the main causes of terrorism. And we've covered that pretty widely. But now let's think, how do we deal with terrorism then? What solutions can we propose for the government to undertake, for normal citizens like you and me to undertake, to mitigate the effect of terrorism in our country? Where do I start, Bill?
Okay, I think to the level that terrorism has infiltrated into our system, into our country and our lives, I stand to say that it cannot be fully eradicated. But, however, it can be prevented. Like, for example, we can sensitize people. I'm sure there are people who join the terror groups because they have been given 10,000 euros, yeah? Yet this is someone who has never even had 5,000 Kenyan shillings on the hand. It means if he had an avenue to get these 5,000 shillings, he couldn't even think of joining the terror group. Yeah? So like as a government, or the government actually should start looking at such loopholes, and also we should educate them. Yeah? Because it's not all about money. We have the terror groups, what they do, they brainwash you, yeah, into machines whereby you just do what they tell you to do, yeah? But if you sensitize people and at least you try to tell them, because I don't know who will be approached tomorrow with how much, because they tend to know our weaknesses and exploit that to get us to work for them, yeah? So we should sensitize them, the people, to know that as long as these weaknesses exist, there are so many ways you can solve them other than joining these terror groups.
So, Bill, according to you, believe that terrorism and recruitment of new terrorists, right, into these militant groups is all about the money?
Okay, it's not all about the money, but you find that, okay, like we said, there's poverty, there's the exclusion, as you said, yeah. There are so many other factors, yeah. But I'm trying to say, you find that a higher number leans on poverty as well, and it's something we ourselves can work on. We ourselves can get jobs to eradicate this poverty. We ourselves can educate these people to know that it's not like we're excluding you. You also have a voice. You can come and reach out and say, hey, I think I need this and this and this, and it can be worked on.
Claire?
Terror was at one point deemed as the sins of the past coming to bite you. And looking at terrorism on a global perspective, I think that we should try, governments should respect the sovereignty of countries, because there have been several terror groups that have been formed because a certain group of people have tried to inflict their own ideals on another group of people, and that does not go well with anyone. And even if you try and educate these people, they're still aggrieved parties. They see it as they brought the war to themselves. So we're just doing what they wanted. So I think to curb or to even stop terrorism would mean that countries should respect the people in their country, their ideals. Don't try and enforce whatever beliefs you have on even your people and also on other countries, so that we don't have what is currently going on in the world, or an even greater version of it.
I have a question. Have we not reached a point where it might be a bit too late for that? Like the greater damage has already been done by people who are trying to inflict their views, and now the terrorists are doing, are counteracting by doing the exact same thing, like trying to institute a worldwide caliphate. They're now flipping the tables on the rest of us. Isn't the damage already done?
But that's the same thing she's talking about.
No,
the terrorists are now trying to inflict their views on the entire world. You see, they've learned from their oppressors. The oppressors tried to, make them more Christian. And
is it a bit too late for us to rectify those wrongs that led to them being oppressed and then turning into the oppressor?
Yeah,
it might be too late to rectify those wrongs, but there's still room for more mistakes to be made. If you look at it critically, over the past couple of years, maybe a decade or so, there have been several uprisings that have been due to this very same actions done by people, and they continue to do them despite seeing what their actions cause. So they haven't learned their lesson yet, I'm sorry to say.
Okay, fair enough. Alvin?
Okay, I think for every problem we have in this world, the solution lies with me and you. We should work on ways to sensitize people and what it really means to belong to a particular group, a particular religious group. If we associate terrorism with a particular religion, which is not correct, we should sensitize people and tell them that terrorism is a crime and it's not affiliated to any religion in any way. That's the first thing. Once we have sensitized people, we'll have dealt with you as an individual. Secondly, we see that for groups, we mentioned the MRC and how they had disputes on land, and how they believed that the land that was owned by the government was theirs. And if we sensitize these people and we make them understand that land that is owned by the state, land that doesn't have is not claimed by anyone, is owned by the state, we will not see any disputes rising, because they'll understand, because this land is not affiliated with anyone in specific, it is not ours, it belongs to the state. It's the state that should dictate what exactly will happen to this land. So it all lies in sensitization. We sensitize our people.
I'll start off by saying this. As part of a solution, let's start from the judiciary. Let us put strict measures, or let us make the penalty for terrorism harsh. to serve the deterrent effect. That is a step we need to take in order for justice. 2, a terrorist will come and attack us here. A terrorist will not negotiate with you. A terrorist will come with one aim, to kill. So why can't you fight back if you can? I remember in Garissa they were saying they were attacking you in the hostels. Yeah. If somebody had even thought of, okay, I know during times of panic, sometimes we fail to think and we actually act out of adrenaline. But if somebody actually thought of even heating up water and using it against the terrorist, but that is
So
one way of
water and
saving
a
your
gun.
life.
Water versus a gun.
No, I
Seriously.
think the principle is fight back.
Yes.
But I have a question.
Yes.
When we decide to fight back, even if not as individuals, even if as a state, we risk becoming a militarized state. Everyone is so on guard. Everyone is so aggressive, and I think it's partly already happening. We have, for example, 5 years back, you could walk anywhere around this city with your camera and take photos. Now, you risk just being arrested and being told, you know what, why, that's a very suspicious action, just going around with your camera. You know, nowadays, you can be stopped for and asked for ID, while it's not actually a crime to walk without ID. There's no law that requires you to
It
to
is
walk
a
with
crime.
ID. It's
You
not
have to
a-
identify yourself
It's
who
not a
you
crime
are.
to walk without identification. You can produce it if you're asked, but it's not a crime to be standing just as you are.
Now,
That's
I'm
not a
telling you,
crime.
there are people who've gone to court and you've been fined
No,
because
show me-
you've been found to walk without any form of
Show me the law.
identification.
Okay. Well,
You don't have any form of
we'll
identification.
argue over that if there's a law that indeed states that you should walk with identification.
Check
But
the Kenya Police
becoming-
Act.
I will check. But we're becoming so militarized that it's no longer, I don't know what's the word I'm looking for. Where we're so on guard that we end up oppressing ourselves and limiting our own freedoms to an unhealthy extent because we're afraid of this external threat.
Now, I'll answer your question very briefly. The war has started. I agree. That is why we are in Somalia. That is why we are in Somalia. Because before we went to Somalia, everybody will bear me witness. The crimes in coast whereby tourists were being abducted was very high. At that time, it had become something so common. Ships that are coming to dock in Mombasa, before they reach Kenyan waters, they are taken. That is what forced us to move to Somalia. Because one, we cannot be having, and you'll agree, we depend on tourism for economic growth. So if we cannot protect these same tourists that we depend on them, how are we going to gain?
So I was asking, how then do we make sure we're not curtailing people's freedoms and their personal rights, like movement, just to protect the national security interest? Yeah, there has to be a line where we draw the interest of the nation and individual rights and freedoms. You're talking about laying your goose that lays the golden egg and protecting that goose. At what point is it okay in your efforts to protect your goose with the golden egg to infringe on someone else's right? You know, there's that saying that says, my freedom of expression ends where another man's nose begins, you know?
Now, to answer your question, there are some rights that are mandatory, and there are those which have a limit. The freedom of movement has a limit. For example, when you're in jail, it has been limited.
Yeah.
No right of freedom, no freedom of movement has been limited when you're told to identify yourself. Times change. In law, we learn that society changes, and therefore the law has to change. The law is dynamic. Current times where we have terrorism has forced us to take these drastic measures. Because one, we don't know who these terrorists are. There's nobody who walks in the streets written over here, I'm a terrorist. So how are we going to
When do we stop? When have we gone too far down this rabbit hole
Yeah, but not-
of drastic change, such that we find ourselves?
it drastic
Well,
to
you
you?
find,
There's a-
you know what?
there's a
it's
very,
small
very
changes. It's like that thing. Like I
cyclic
said it
back
before.
and forth going
It's-
on
sorry,
here.
it's
Where does
that-
this right begins? When do we know this
No,
is
I
happening?
I
What
think
I'm
all this
worried about
is
us
all
becoming
simple.
like North Korea without noticing it. You know that the story when you boil a frog in hot water, yeah, it doesn't notice the temperature changes. So today it's don't take pictures of a building. Tomorrow it's walk with identification. 10 years down the line, it's no press freedom. We don't know anything about what's going on. We think we live in utopia, but in real sense, we live in.
So your problem is people should be allowed to walk without identification.
No, my problem is let's not curtail people's rights in the name of national security.
That's what I'm saying.
We
No
can
right-
do both. It's
no
not
right has
impossible.
been denied because when you
everyone, we have to
because-
close. Time's up. Rodney and Mariam can go all day.
And on Twitter, we'll go on.
Yeah, of course. So they've already committed. They'll be on Twitter discussing the same issue. So I am Austin Yambok.
And I am Mariam Bishar. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to a wonderful panel. We'll see you tomorrow.